Greetings, everyone. What is up? Anthony Broome here from the Wolverine.com postgame show. Michigan starts its season with a 34-17 win over New Mexico in the season opener. Quick little programming note here. Typically, you guys have gotten used to Ryan Van Bergen and myself doing these postgame shows together live after the game. A little bit of a different setup. We will be together for noon games this year over at his gym, Blue Lion Fitness. So excited for that. For night games, him and I will record together the next day. For 3:30 games, we will go live around 9 p.m. that night. So night games a little bit different. Of course, we get two of them to start the year. Comes with its own set of challenges, but we're down for it. So regardless, there will be a video for me after the game, within a half hour of the game ending, most weeks, and some weeks we'll double dip. Some weeks we'll just do the full show with Ryan. That's just going to be how it shakes out here. So a lot to get to format-wise. I'm going to save the meat and potatoes and the back and forth for the conversation with Ryan tomorrow morning. We're planning on recording sometime around 8 a.m. and then in your podcast feeds after that. It won't be live, by the way. So what we're going to do, I took notes throughout the game. And real quick, I want to shout out, of course, tonight's show, which is over across the street, 1304 Main Street, with our friends over at the Michigan Blue Zone Tailgate. They want to take your Michigan football tailgating experience to the next level while making your game day easier. An inclusive tailgate experience with VIP options. There's food, there's alcohol, whatever you want to partake in, they have it. And I'm not even joking, guys, a direct shot across the street. I'm staring at the press box where I walked. So I want to shout those guys out for giving me a place to do a quick post-game show tonight. Of course, noon game for Central Michigan a couple weeks from now. I'll be at Blue Lion Fitness with Ryan Van Bergen. We are brought to you tonight by our friends over at Lewis Jewelers. They are back again for the 2025 football season. They've been serving the Ann Arbor and Detroit region since 1921. Lewis Jewelers' reputation and continued success stems from the belief that a successful jewelry store is built on integrity, quality customer service, and quality products. Lewis Jewelers are a proud supporter of Michigan athletics as well, been a proud supporter of us for many years. So visit them at their location at 300 South Maple Road in Ann Arbor or online at lewisjewelers.com. So I will take some questions here. We've got a couple super chats. We'll go first to Daniel Cuzart, who says, I understand it's game one, but what was our defense doing? I'm going to start off by this because I think there were mostly positives tonight. This is going to be one where I'm not really going to have a strong opinion on the defense one way or another until I go back and do a rewatch. You look at the box score. Michigan allows 267 total yards, 217 yards through the air. That's a little bit of a concern, but it was on 47 dropbacks too. They didn't run the ball well. 28 rushes for 50 yards. They scored a touchdown on an insanely cool trick play, fake field goal. Give credit where credit's due there. Michigan said it would be ready for trick plays. They weren't, which shouldn't be a huge surprise given the way the special teams performed at times last year. But this is a game in general, and it goes both offense and defense, where I feel like I'm going to benefit the most from a second watch. And obviously saw the social media angst, saw the message board angst. We see all of that in real time. I think this one, when we parse through it on both sides of the ball, we're going to feel a little bit better about this. I think this was a good first starting point for that. Now, defensively, if we want to just get into those notes right off the bat, tonight, I noticed the bulk of the issues at defensive back. A lot of rotating. I think they miss Rod Moore in terms of a guy who can get you lined up right. And, last year when you didn't have Rod Moore, you still had guys like Bakari Page and Will Johnson back there and veteran guys who had been through it. You're starting safeties tonight with Brandon Hillman, who was a rotational guy last year. TJ Metcalf played nickel. He was at Arkansas last year. Mason Curtis is a sophomore. There are some things to sort out. Cornerback Jair Hill, I did not think had a very good night. That reminded me a lot of some of the valleys in his game last season. So just to lead with that group. I think that's where most of my concern will be. Defensive line, they only had, I think, the one sack. One was nullified, obviously, on the Jay Sean Barham penalty, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But defensive line I thought would be a little more disruptive. Disappointed by that, but again, it's tough to, especially with trench play. And I know the offensive line will come up too. It's so hard to parse through that in real time, especially we're watching a freshman quarterback make his first start. We're watching a new offense. We're watching new pieces on both sides of the ball. So I think the rewatch for me is going to be pretty beneficial there. We'll go to this $4.99 super chat from AJ Ransom, who says, Jerome preaches a dog mentality, but he coaches like a lamb. Players did well. Coaches were suspect as usual. I mean, the as usual is a bit of I won't say it's an overstatement, but the 4th and 1 that they didn't go for in the first half kind of changed the energy of the game. I mean, they were completely dominant offense, defense leading up to that point. I don't know if, that's because we're not on the sideline and because we're watching games and we're feverishly tweeting through it, posting through it, whatever it is. It's easy to point to that. That second quarter was just a mess in general. Again, operational. I know I said coming into this game operationally, what you wanted to see was a well-coached team that fought through its mistake, made some mistakes, but there was a poise there. And, Sharon, I get the Barham thing was an emotional swing for them. Should have been a touchdown on the board. It wasn't. Quarterback was down, whatever. I get that. He gets kicked out of the game for targeting, which I know we're going to get questions about that. They can appeal. We'll see if they do. It kind of looks like to me, he leads with his shoulder. He's a 6'3" guy. I don't know how much lower I don't know how you're supposed to tackle any differently. He wraps him up. He leads with his shoulder, kind of makes that head-to-head contact. Regardless, whether you know what targeting is or not, I think the rule that a guy is kicked out for the first half of the next game is ridiculous. I think it should be like the NBA, where there's a couple that you have banked, and then once you hit that number, you're out. You're suspended for a half for a game. It's painful enough to lose a guy in a football game. It's painful enough to lose the 15 yards. It feels like an overcorrection, and it really has done its part to ruin college football, at least the flow of the game and what's fair and how it's officiated. So, but even with that, on that same drive, you've got a touch that wasn't clearly bobbled. How is Sharon Moore not getting a call from upstairs to take a look at that? I mean, it was a clear drop, clear as day when you watch the replay. So when it comes to some of those operational things, I completely agree with you. Let's go to Daniel Schutz. I don't agree with this at all, but you paid your money, Daniel, so I'll read it. Our passing game stinks. We leave the defense on the field. We need to run 45 times a game and pass 20. Lindsay does not play complimentary football. See, this is the game that Michigan fans, some of you guys will play, because if they did run the ball 45 times in this game, you guys are talking about they didn't get Bryce Underwood enough reps heading into Oklahoma. That's the conversation we'd be having, and I'd be answering a different $4.99 super chat about why they didn't throw the ball more, why they didn't get this guy reps. It's clear to me right now, and again, I think the rewatch is going to help with this. I think the offensive line is a little bit ahead passing game than it is the run blocking. Run blocking was kind of a mess, and thank God for Justice Haynes. Runs of 56 and 59 yards tonight, 3 touchdowns. You saw immediately why they made him a priority in the transfer portal. Producer Megan's pulling up the box score here. 201 yards rushing. Kind of a disappointing night for Jordan Marshall. All the talk had been that those guys were 1A and 1B. 11 carries, 29 yards for Marshall. Again, I have to go back and look at the tape, crunch the film, so to speak. I don't know what happened there, but you certainly like having a guy. Justice Haynes, I think for them, can be what we always hoped Donovan Edwards would be. A home run hitter, a guy who runs through contact, can catch the ball out of the backfield. I was pretty encouraged by that. He's going to get a game ball. As soon as I'm done here, I'll finish game balls. He's getting one of the game balls. Bryce Underwood's going to get a game ball. TJ Guy's going to get a game ball. We'll talk about that as well. I don't think the passing game was the issue tonight. I actually think it's probably the strength of their offense right now. And when you have the weapon at quarterback that Michigan does, you can make the argument he's already their best offensive player. We'll talk about him. Want to get through another super chat here from AM89, who says, what was the position group that performed better than expectations, and which was the one that was the most surprisingly underwhelming? I would say, no, I need to go look at the box score. I liked the safety group a lot. I think you have guys like Brandon Hillman, Mason Curtis, TJ Metcalf, who they're fast to the football and they lay lumber. They hit you hard. Specifically Hillman, who I saw he dropped another expletive in a press conference today, quickly becoming selfishly the media's favorite quote on this team. I like the safeties. I thought they'd be good though. Wide receiver, we're still waiting on guys to separate, but clearly Chip Lindsey likes Samaj Morgan. I liked what I saw with how he was used. Shannon Goodwin not only had a sweet grab on a 39-yard play from Bryce Underwood, also blocks his rear end off. You can see why he's become a favorite of them. Kendrick Bell had a 30-yard reception. Donovan McCulley, a little bit underwhelming tonight. I think if he didn't have a drop, there was a play where he was targeted, and I just thought he could have been a little stronger to the football, but 4 catches, 31 yards for him. I think the passing game in general, Marlon Klein, 6 catches, 93 yards, 1 touchdown. I've been comparing him to Luke Schoonmaker all summer. He looked like Colston Love tonight. He was great. So shout out to him there. So those are the groups that stand out. Again, a lot of it's going to be based on a rewatch and maybe talking with my co-host tomorrow. Surprisingly underwhelming, I would go defensive line. I thought there'd be a little more. They've been talking about flexing this depth all fall camp, but I didn't see enough. I didn't see enough on the interior tonight, and I was a little disappointed by that. So, of course, we'll go back and we will watch through that tomorrow. I'm going to go through, unless we get a super chat here, which again, that'll put you right to the front of the line. I'll stop in my tracks and answer your question, but I'm going to roll through some of my notes here as we do a quicker show here tonight. We'll start on offense. The story of tonight's game is Bryce Underwood, who, again, there's going to be the people, and it'll be Buckeyes, it'll be Michigan State fans, but it's going to be a lot of Michigan fans too who say, but it was New Mexico, 21 of 31, 251 yards and a touchdown. 3 or 4 of those incompletions were straight up drops. There was the play by McCulley I referenced earlier. The thing I liked most about Bryce is that he doesn't look good compared to a freshman. He looks good compared to most quarterbacks in college football. And if you look around the country, there were a lot of teams that I think will be very good that played weird openers this weekend. And quarterbacks who, even look at that. I'm not going to do the Texas, Ohio State hot takery thing, but those 2 quarterbacks, I think you make the argument Bryce Underwood was better than both of them in their first starts this weekend. So, yeah, he is so advanced. He knows where to go with the football. He doesn't put the ball in harm's way. He doesn't make the same mistake twice. Man, the ball comes off of his hand. He is what people hyped Joe Milton up to be a couple summers ago, where he's got a rocket arm and he's a super athlete and he's this physical specimen. He's going to run through your face. I think he gets a lot of comparisons to Trevor Lawrence because of the recruiting ranking, because of the idea that he's a once-in-the-decade guy. He might be the most well-rounded and talented and college-ready quarterback to come out in the internet recruiting era. I don't think that's hyperbole. Maybe it is, but he's wise beyond his years. Like I said, this kid turned 18 11 days ago. So incredibly impressed with him. A couple super chats here. Justin Kirkland, who says, we are a fumble and a terrible series from the refs from 40-3. People need to settle down. Yeah, you can play that game in you could do that take in a lot of different football games. I think when I watch this game over, it's going to look a lot more like a 40-3 game would, as opposed to a game that, if New Mexico had scored on the goal line before time expired, would have been 34-24 or something like that. Something that people need to remember about this New Mexico, and I don't expect you to remember this. We're talking about a team last year. So Jason Eck and a lot of these players were at Idaho. They go play an opener in Eugene, Oregon, and kind of do a lot of the same, a lot of the same things where when that game goes final, it's 24-14. And I'm not saying that this Michigan team is going to be what that Oregon team was, where it went undefeated and won the Big Ten and made the college football playoff. But that coach has got some cojones on him, and they do some weird things that stress you out. So you tip your cap to those guys. But yeah, I think it's going to look a lot better on rewatch for sure. Michigan Go Blue 1-2-3-4 says early thoughts on Oklahoma. Again, going to have to watch their game. I saw that John Mateer threw for almost 400 yards. That's a bit of a concern on a night when Michigan's pass defense underwhelmed. I can't say disappointed. I got to go back and rewatch, but underwhelmed. I did look at that box score, and it looked like they ran for like 3.2 yards per carry. If they want to try and establish the run on Michigan next week, I think a lot of the things we saw in this game are going to get cleaned up, and that could play right into Michigan's favor. Oklahoma needs probably Mateer to throw for 350 yards next week, 300 yards, whatever it is, and maybe not. Maybe it's a road test and this is too much for them. But in the here and now, I don't have enough of a full picture on them yet. So Mateer's good. He's darn good, and NFL guys like him a lot. Rolling back through, we just got another super chat from AJ Ransom for $1.99. He says, does Michigan appeal the targeting call? I haven't seen – I think they're going to. I think they have a case to. They'll probably send that film in. So shout out Isaiah Hull. He's live tweeting the press conference right now. He says, Sherrone says they don't agree with the Jay Sean Barham targeting call and will escalate to the Big Ten. So they're going to appeal this. And I think those don't often get overturned, but I think Ohio State had one overturned like midweek last year. So I'm encouraged by that. I think that was a football play. I don't think it was reckless. I think it was I thought he did a pretty good job of not being reckless, which is Jay Sean Barham. It was kind of his MO coming into last year. So we'll see. Yeah, I do think they will appeal. I'm going to rapid fire through some offensive, just a couple notes I had here. Chip Lindsey, I was pretty impressed with, especially in that first quarter. I mean, they started fast, which this team never did. This team never started at all last year, but they started fast on offense. There was a good feel, good balance. They threw a lot of looks at them. Like I said earlier, Samaj Morgan was super involved. You could tell that he's going to be a big piece. And I speculated that I thought that might be the case when you look at Lindsey's history with working with slot receivers. I think that this is going to be Chip plus Bryce as Samaj Morgan stock through the roof. Same with Marlon Klein. Again, my expectation was that he'd be a guy that grab a couple passes a game and, maybe you've got 30, 35 grabs by the end of the year. He's a legitimate weapon. And I know coming out of high school, the MO on him is that he was pretty much a big receiver. You had to teach him how to play tight end. And right now, I mean, you give Steve Kasula all the credit in the world. He took this guy into the jungle, so to speak, this offseason, which they called it, and he looks like a contributor. It was really impressive. Super chat for $5 from French Toast. He says, credit where credit's due. New Mexico's QB was actually solid. Our defense in the flat wasn't great. Do you think that was by design? I think that they saw an advantage and went after it. That was probably someone asked about the most disappointing position group. I think that was the most disappointing aspect of the game, is that it just seemed like, and again, you have a quarterback that completes 2/3 of his passes on 47 attempts. I need Michigan to be a little better than that. Now, then again, threw 3 picks. Raise your hand if you would have expected more interceptions and sacks from Michigan on that. Actually, the same amount. So Cole Sullivan had a sack and a pick. Maybe I should give him a game ball. Troy Bowles had a sack on the last play of the game. Dom Nichols had a sack. So really, the bulk of those disruptive plays came when that second unit was in late in that game. Cole Sullivan, I'll talk about him in a second. He's a huge key now if Jay Sean Barham is shelved for the first half next week. So thank you, French Toast, for that question. I don't think I really answered it well, but again, a lot of this is off the cuff, and it's tough to say. Justice Haynes is as advertised. I talked about him already. Some of the negatives, not impressed with the interior of the offensive line at all. Specifically, that right guard spot with Brady Norton and Nathan Afobe rotating. Greg Crippen, I'm still waiting for things to completely click there. I think he's got a lot more to give. And Giovanni El-Hadi, I'm gonna have to go back and watch him. There was some people shaking their fist and looking up to the sky at plays that maybe he missed or assignments he missed. Talking about the wide receivers, I thought they were a bit up and down. The drops, that's something you got to figure out. That's concentration. And I think there are enough options here where a guy like we've already seen a guy like Fred Moore somewhat fall out of, I won't say fall out of favor, but he's not in the top three. Jerome Moore said that to start the week. A drop tonight's not going to help him at all. Something that I really like offensively is there is a burgeoning big play ability. Like this could be a roller coaster at times, but last year was, I mean, a rickshaw with the wheels falling off. They never did. They were never a threat to do anything. They did nothing that stresses a defense at all. And now you've got a quarterback that has a cannon for an arm and knows where to go with it. You've got a play caller who knows who has a history of getting these guys the football, and you've got a running back now who is lightning in a bottle in Justice Haynes. I think I'm not doing he's clearly running back one stuff yet. I know Jordan Marshall has more to give, and when you're a between the tackles guy, you're tied into what the interior of the offensive line does, and I thought that group underwhelmed. So there's a big playability there, and there could be some frenetic ups and downs. But man, oh man, like you saw the vision tonight, and I know it's New Mexico, but you also saw Underwood putting the ball in some pretty tight spots as well. I was incredibly impressed by that, and it's good to hear that there's a lot of hyperbole that comes out of fall camp in the offseason. We had heard that the offense was more explosive. Now, to what extent, we'll see when they play a real team next week, but that's an aspect that was pretty exciting to see. Going to go to the defense now. Again, we'll probably go for about another 8 minutes or so. So if you have any super chats to get in there, go for it. The safeties, I talked about them. Super hard-hitting guys, athletic. And just as I'm about to go into the safeties, we get a super chat for $2 from Go Blue 982. I don't think it's Michigan centric, so to speak, but we'll read it anyways. He says, I bet Bama wants Jim or JH. Oh, Justice Haynes back. So it is Michigan Central. Sorry. I'm still wired to think that JH means Jim Harbaugh. He says, I bet Bama wants Justice Haynes back after being slammed by Florida State. Yeah, that's going to be interesting to hear the fallout from that. I'm sure Alabama fans are reacting super normal to all that tonight. Justice Haynes, he ran so well. He's a former 5-star guy. You almost wonder how he not fell out of favor. He just wasn't a featured guy there. Saw him a little bit when Michigan played in the Rose Bowl a couple years ago, but yeah, they want that. I'm sure they might be shaking their fist at the sky over that. Back to the defense. Josiah Edmond, bad night on that drive where they scored on that fake field goal. He had a couple miscues on that drive. Wasn't crazy about what we saw from him. We talked about the Jay Sean Barham targeting already, so I don't need to get into that. Talked about how I was disappointed by the interior of the defense. I need to see more. I do. Rayshon Benny, I think PFF had is the top graded defensive tackle that was returning in the Big Ten. I didn't see him flash a ton tonight. Trey Pierce is a rising name and got the start next to him. I got to go back and watch some of this stuff again. This game, the opener in particular, especially on a team where you have so many unknowns, tough to get a sense of everything. And obviously the headlining thing was going to be that offense and Bryce Underwood. So we'll get back to you on that. Cole Sullivan, talked about him. He's a guy that I think he has a ceiling that's higher than Jay Sean Barham, if we're being completely honest. Now, they do a lot of the same things, and he's going to be the understudy. Jay Sean Barham, a little more freaky, a little more athletic. But Cole Sullivan's a guy who can play the traditional linebacker role. He can drop back into coverage. I think he can rush the passer. He kind of reminds me of Jack Campbell when he was at Iowa, of course, now the Detroit Lions. I'm really excited to see him expand into in more of a role. You don't want to see it happen with a guy potentially out for targeting, but that guy can play. And I know that Jimmy Rolder's a guy they consider their third starter at linebacker. Cole Sullivan's a freak too. I'm excited to see more of him. Special teams, pretty rough night outside of Dominic Zavada. I thought Hudson Hollenbeck's punts were a little bit flat. I thought that obviously I'm not going to kill Andrew Marsh in his first game for fumbling. Thank God it was against New Mexico and not against Oklahoma. I think that's something he'll learn from. But again, it's still something that happens, still on your resume. Yeah, I'll be honest. I have nothing. It's nothing personal. I haven't been impressed with the special teams under JB Brown since Jay Harbaugh left. So that registers as a bit of a disappointment to me as well. There was a point between the second and third quarters, I have this in my notes too, where New Mexico had 17 of the 22 minutes of possessing the football. That's on everyone. Offense on not sustaining drives. Of course, one of those was I think that was, I'd have to go back and look, but you don't want to see that. I get it. It's a lot of FCS guys and players slip through the cracks, but this is a game that you'd want to see Michigan pull away a little bit more in. But young offense, defense is rotating a lot, trying to figure out what it is. I can forgive that. And I guess my last point here was that a lot of teams have had weird openers this weekend. This one was similar to last year's, where this was a little more sustained success early on in the game. Last year it was Zeke Berry gets a quick interception. You're in the red zone. You score fast, and then you're up 7-0. But then not a whole lot after that, especially, New Mexico or Fresno State and Mikey Keene were driving to make that a one-score game in the fourth quarter. This never felt like it was in danger of being that. But there were, the second quarter, foot comes off the gas a little bit. The details, the nitty-gritty, the being where you're supposed to be, putting bad plays behind you, moving on to the next play, that defined the Jim Harbaugh era. Again, outside of the 3 games to end last season, that was a problem for Sharon Moore and Michigan. So you want to see them be a little more poised. You want to see them hone in a little bit more on the small things. Because I think when you let a lot of small things go, eventually the cracks become fissures and you dug a hole for yourself. So overall, that's how I feel about tonight's game. I think we're going to wrap this here. Again, thank you guys so much for, unless there are any other questions, I'll give you a 10-second countdown here. Injury-wise, the only one I noticed was Mason Curtis, who had come out of the game, I think, in the second half. Channing Goodwin was banged up at some point too. We'll see if those are concerns. And obviously, we'll talk to Sharon Moore on Monday as well. I'm not super privy to what is being said in the post-game press conference, which I think is going on as we speak. So mostly clean bill of health. I think offensively, if you want to throw a grade on it, I'd give this one like a B- or a B, just because of and Bryce Underwood and what he's going to do with this passing game. He's doing a lot of the heavy lifting there. Even with the big runs from Justice Haynes, need to see more from that run game. Need to see more from the offensive line. AJ Ransom, you want to flip over the defensive side of the ball, says secondary wasn't great with the low pass rush. Yeah, that in tandem, it needs to work a little better, a little more in sync. So that's going to do it for me. I am going to get my writing done. I'm going to get a couple hours of sleep, and then we're going to break this thing down tomorrow morning in your podcast feeds with Ryan Van Bergen. So for myself, Wolverine.com, for my producer, Megan, behind the scenes, does a great job picking up the slack for us. I am Anthony Broome. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will literally talk to you in about 8 hours. Thanks again.